Hello, I'm Dr. Keith Keating, the author of the newly released Trusted Learning Advisor book. The best advice I ever received was from a former boss a few years ago who convinced me after 2 or 3 years to continue my own educational journey and receive my doctorate from the University of Pennsylvania.
Ooh. So why did that help you? I mean, you're a smart guy, Keith. You've written a book. I mean, why did you need to continue your education?
He told me, and the way that he was pitching it to me was if you believe in yourself and you want to make yourself an even better person, an even smarter person, and open up doors that would not have been otherwise opened, this is the program and the path that you need to take. And my mindset was not there. I was already in learn and development for years, and I thought, well, I'm already in the field. Why do I need to continue my own learning and development? And as I'm saying this, I'm realizing that that's one of the challenges for our industry is that's a mindset that exists, I think, among many L&D practitioners is I'm in learning, so it doesn't actually apply to me. It applies to other people. And that was my mindset for so many years.
Oh, wow. That's so interesting. So I, I've seen that mindset. I've heard that mindset. In fact, I've had managers say, "Well, Phil, you read the books for us. You just let us know what you think." And I'm like, "Well, okay, I will, but I don't think that's enough." So you went and got your doctorate. Now that you have that, I mean, do you still stay sharp? What else are you doing to stay on top of the game, Keith?
Every day I'm learning. I'm whether it's in my field of practice or just as a human, but I think going back through the doctoral program helped me realize that I needed to also be a lifelong learner and not just be pitching it and practice or preaching it to other people, but it applied to me as well. So the answer to the question is every day is a learning journey for me, and I'm always looking for different opportunities, whether it was learning how to write a book. Now I'm learning how to promote the book once it's published. I'm also now a professor at the University of Pennsylvania as well. So learning how to design programs for this opportunity. So just lots of different ways.
Wow. Wow, that's super cool, man. That's quite a transformation, if you will, for you. So congrats on that. One of the transformations in the book that you talk about, which is a fantastic book, by the way. Congratulations to
Thank you.
you. You're welcome. So with that, one of the big transformations you say early in the book is from order taker to trusted advisor. So let's start with order taker. What does that mean? Why is that a challenge?
Good question. Order taker, I would define it as this. When someone else in your organization identifies who, what, where, when, and why a specific learning intervention should occur, they make this decision and then they tell us, hey, we want you to put together a 2-day instructor-led course for our salespeople to help them sell better. Or we want you to put together a 30-minute web-based training to change this behavior. They're not engaging us, they're not including us in the discussion, in the needs analysis to figure out what is the actual problem we're trying to solve, or does the problem actually exist? Somebody else has already decided all this, and they're giving us that order to execute. And I think we historically have been treated like order takers since really the beginning of time, for L&D, if you will. That's actually how we started. So it started with managers determining what workers needed to do. So managers would identify we needed employees to move this widget from here in the 1800s, manufacturing, industrial revolution. And that's continued throughout. So they told us what we needed to do. They went on, we trained them to do it. So we started as order takers, but over the years, we've gained a different set of skills, practitioner skills, experience. We understand the science of learning, or we should understand it. And we've got this great value proposition that we can provide, but not as order takers. As order takers, we're just reactive, waiting for someone else to make all these decisions and then execute those decisions.
Hmm. Yeah, that's definitely a challenge, right? We lose our agency when we do that. And so with that, before we get into trusted advisor piece, one of the things that you and I talked about before was AI. And
Mhm.
I've heard some L&D professionals say, ooh, AI is either going to be the death of us or it's going to, oh, I'm not real comfortable with that. So what's your stance on AI? And maybe you can define a couple ways or show examples of how we can use it in L&D.
This is my favorite topic right now. Not to jump on the AI bandwagon, but there is no future that exists without AI. There's no version of the future. And we have to embrace this. We are at the precipice of a massive transformation in the way that we work. Our jobs are literally changing day by day as a result of AI, even if it's so subtle that you don't even recognize it yet. It's like when the internet first became accessible to everybody. I think of it like it's right now the AI wild, wild west. Last year there was maybe, I don't know, I think 20, 30 companies focusing on AI. Now there's thousands of companies. And here's the thing. Every single leader right now is asking themselves the following questions. How can we use AI to be more effective, more efficient, increase revenue, and reduce costs, including the most costly resource, people, humans? And so for us to stay ahead in L&D, and not just us, but workers in general, we've got to embrace AI, learn it, use it, but don't fear it. Recognize it for what it is. It's a tool that augments our work, that can handle some of the tasks to free us up to focus on things that we can do better, our expertise, our human skills. So specifically to your question, in L&D, how can we use it? Right now, I can go into ChatGPT and I can create a leadership program, a sales program, a change management program, power skills, human skills, whatever it is, in 30 seconds. I can then take it from there. I can put it into Gamma or whatever tool you want to use. It turns it into PowerPoint slides. There's 20 other tools I could put it in to create digital content. Then I can have oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank. What's it called? It's not the real version of you.
Oh,
It's
yeah, an avatar.
Thank you. I can have my avatar, then present it back within 10 minutes. I could do all of this. Whereas historically, we would say, okay, it takes us about 3 months to create all this from start to finish. We have to do all this research. It needs analysis. And I'm not saying that AI is better than us, because it's not better than us as a whole. It is better than some people, potentially. The challenge is when our business partners figure this out, because it's still so new and it's evolving so quickly, I can't even keep up with it. But when our business partners figure out that they don't have to come to us anymore, that they could actually create something that's decent, maybe even good, sometimes good is simply good enough. And so that's what we have to be focusing on, is that as L&D practitioners, we have to embrace AI and take control of the narrative and the conversation and become the experts and bring it to our business partners proactively, rather than sitting by waiting for someone else in the organization to figure this out.
Yeah, I think that's so right on. First, I like to think of AI not as artificial intelligence, but as augmented intelligence. It's almost like
Mm.
my assistant.
Mhm.
I can put it in there. It doesn't replace me, but it certainly makes me, then another A word, more agile, right? I can develop it in 10 minutes instead of 10 months, which is a
Yes.
massive shift. Massive shift. So I like that you said that. I agree with that you said that. Um, so with that, then we also have to shift towards that trusted advisor. And that means we can't BS anymore and hide behind the fact, oh, it's going to take us months to do this, when our best and brightest leaders know it's probably not. So how do
Mhm.
we let's start with, what is a trusted advisor and why is that important?
A trusted learning advisor is a strategic business partner that is embedded in the business, that's trusted, that's sought after, and is respected. We all have trusted advisors in our life. It could be your doctor, it could be a lawyer. It's someone literally that you trust, that you're going to go to, and that you're going to know has your best interest at heart. They're not trying to sell you something. They're not trying to pull, one over on you. They're truly a confidant and someone that you know is going to support you. We don't have a lot of that in learning and development. I've been on both the vendor side and the customer side, supplier side. I played every different role. And rarely will you find somebody that doesn't have their own motives at heart. And for us as trusted learning advisors and L&D practitioners, our motives need to be about the learners. Everything we do is for them. And I understand that somebody else writes the check along the way. That's our strategic business partner, but ultimately we're serving the talent in the organization. And we've got to keep that in mind.
Awesome. Super, super important. I think that we don't see enough of that partnership. And that's definitely a big key. So with that, what I really enjoy about your book is that you've got 5 pillars of trust, of the trusted learning advisors. So let's talk about those a little bit, because I think those are super important to do. So let's start, just pick any one of them and let's talk about that.
I feel like you're asking me to pick my favorite child.
No, I'm not asking your favorite. I'm just asking you one that you want to talk about today.
So let's talk about credibility. Credibility is, I think, such an important factor of building trust. And credibility is about being believable. It's about being authentic. And most importantly, it's about possessing the competency in L&D that provides value to stakeholders. And here's why I position it that way. Our industry is very inclusive. We allow anyone to say, I'm in learning and development. And that means that somebody could have just taken a quick course, maybe read a book, and says, you know what? I'm now an instructional designer. I'm now a trainer. Mind you, I'm not criticizing that, because that's how I joined the industry. I had no experience, didn't belong here, but because it is inclusive, it was welcoming, and I now have a career. However, I feel like I'm doing my penance now, and I'm trying to make up for all of the years I wasn't truly credible and I wasn't truly an L&D practitioner by trade. And that's an issue I think that continues to grow. Is on one hand, yes, we're inclusive. Anybody can be in the field. On the other hand, when we're not credible, when we don't possess the true competency and skills to drive the value to our stakeholders and talent, we put us at risk, and it makes our stakeholders not trust us. And once that trust is broken, there's a ripple effect across the organization and then ultimately across the industry. And that's what keeps us in that order taker mindset. But I'm curious for you, what do you think credibility means to you?
Well, so credibility, education, certainly. Folks look and they want to see, did you get some tickets punched? That's one thing. Secondly, it's experience in what you're teaching and experience doing what people have done. So my expertise is in sales. So I've carried a bag. I'm carrying a bag right now, right? I understand sales. I've been a sales leader. I've been a sales professional. I've done all those things. So having that credibility of, yeah, when I did this, this was the outcome. And it has to be recency too. I think that's the other thing. It can't be 20 years ago. We have to be recent. When is the last time you actually performed this? So trusted advisors to me often are also trusted practitioners. They have to be someone who is demonstrated that they can do the job. I think that's one of the big challenges of managers today, is that if they've been promoted up, well, they've never been a manager, and maybe they weren't the best salesperson. So sometimes there's a disconnect there. So that means to get that credibility, you have to have a different skill that your team is lacking, that you can help them then connect to do more of what they do. So that's the credibility. That's credibility as I define it.
I'm smiling because one of the analogies I use is in 2003, I stretched, I trained for, and I ran the New York City Marathon.
Wow.
Does that make me a marathon runner today? No. No, if I went and tried to run a marathon right now, I would pull my calves. I would probably sprain my ankle. I don't have my inhaler. Thank you, COVID. So I couldn't run it today. But that mindset of, yeah, I ran the marathon. I'm a marathon runner. You're not practicing. You're not actively keeping that skill fresh. And to your point, I think that's such a challenge and an important aspect that we've got to remember is you've got to keep your skills fresh and recent. I like that you said, use the word recent, because to me, there's a difference between a thought leader, in quotes, and a practitioner. I want to be a practitioner. I don't want to be a thought leader. And I'm not trying to offend anybody, but what I find is when people classify themselves as thought leaders, they're away from the work. And I don't want to be away from the work. I always want to be actively doing the work so that the stories I'm telling and sharing are relevant, contextualized, and they're recent, not something that happened 15 or 20 years ago.
Yeah. So back when I was selling fax machines, Keith, no, right? I mean, but I hear that though, or the examples that folks use, I still hear people talking about the old marshmallow test for delayed gratification.
Yeah.
Not saying that's a bad test, not saying that selling fax machines isn't real, but it's not recent and it doesn't connect with today's learners. So I think I'm glad that you agree with that. I think that's an important thing. But with that, one thing that stood out to me is reputational damage and how we can hurt ourselves as trusted advisors, as L&D professionals, to really damage our reputation by sometimes maybe intentionally and sometimes unintentionally. So what
Hmm.
have you seen and why is that so important to you?
People talk, people have experiences. It is, and I'm sure know this in sales as well, but your customer experience is one of the most important aspects for us to focus on in terms of success. I love CX. Uh, and that same applies in L&D. We have customers that we need to be thinking about. When they have that bad experience, they remember it and they tell other people about that bad experience. And I found that more often people are sharing the bad experiences than the good ones. And so we have opportunities to influence people's perspective and perception on learning and development. And and I tell this to my team all the time that when you are in that classroom, virtual or in person, you are creating an experience for every single person in there. And you may not realize this, but even if it's, let's say, onboarding or frontline workers, you have to treat them with the same respect and the same uh, authenticity that you would if they were C-suites, because those frontline workers are going to grow through the organization, whether ours or someone else. And that single bad experience is going to have a ripple effect throughout their entire career. In my doctoral research, I was studying chief financial officers, and specifically, I wanted to understand how they perceived value of L&D in organizations, or if they did. And one of the things that I asked at the beginning of each of the research discussions was, tell me about a learning experience that impacted you. And I didn't say whether it was positive or negative. And a majority of the people I interviewed remembered the negative one. And they remembered it either in university or somewhere in their career. They were like, yeah, I attended this really horrible training once, and I just didn't go back to training anymore after that. And when I dug in, it wasn't a recent thing. It was, they were early in their career and they just had a bad experience and they remembered that. And they didn't trust that learning and development has a science to it. They didn't trust that there's value to it. And so that stayed with them. So the answer to your question is, it's important for us to treat every single instance with respect, regardless of who those trainees are, who those learners are, because they're going to remember that. And at some point, that's going to potentially influence their decision down the road, whether or not they want to invest in learning and development or whether they believe that there's value there.
Wow. Wow, that makes so much sense. I worked for a CFO who found zero value in training, and I was like, really? Like, the guy had a master's degree from Harvard and a bachelor's from a prestigious university, military veteran, really smart guy, or so I thought, and then didn't trust anything, didn't want to invest, didn't want to do any of this stuff, and I'm like, wow, why is that? And likely, because he never let me get close enough to find out, likely it was because he had a bad experience. Likely it was because he had something.
Yeah, to that point, and to the listeners, what I would encourage you to do, because I didn't do this either, but consider the CFO one of your stakeholders. We often do not. And that was something else I uncovered in my research was the CFOs were saying, don't just send me your Excel spreadsheet with your ROI data when you're looking for more money, because the way that you calculate ROI does not translate to the way that we calculate it in the field of finance. And so those numbers really are meaningless to me. Build a relationship with me. Bring me the qualitative data as well. Tell me the stories. Tell me how you are actually impacting, who you're impacting, why it was impactful. Don't just send me a spreadsheet. And it was such an aha moment for me because I grew up in this industry fearing the CFO. I was told, don't talk to them. If you have cost savings, don't tell them. If you have ROI data, don't share that with them, because if you share with them cost savings, they're going to reduce your budget. If you share with them ROI results, they're going to expect you to be able to replicate that over and over again, which we often can't. And so I also lived in fear. And in my research, I came across a lot of material dating back to the 50s that was really saying the same message. Avoid the CFOs. They're the ones that always cut L&D budgets. Well, what I uncovered as well in my research was they're not just cutting L&D's budget, they're cutting everybody's budget. It's not just us. It's sales, or sales is typically last because that's who brings in the money. But it's marketing, it's HR, it's whatever else. It's just that we're in L&D. And so when we see budget cuts that impact us, that's all we see. We have this myopic viewpoint. So moral of the story is the CFO should be one of your stakeholders. So include them, build a relationship with them, not when it is time for budget season. That's too obvious, and they recognize that. Catch them off season.
Wow. Solid stuff. So with that, let's pivot into the individual and how they can develop a good personal brand so they can be a trusted advisor. What are some things that you recommend as they're getting started on this journey? Maybe they're brand new to the L&D organization, or they've been in it and maybe they're looking to move up, and maybe they don't have a strong brand. Are there some things, Keith, that they can do? Because I know you talk a lot about this in the book about personal branding. But how do we get started on that journey?
Well, the first thing I would say to start down that path of transformation is to grab a copy of the book and let it be your guide. But beyond that, branding is critical for us from an L&D perspective. So I'll talk about the individual, but then also the L&D organization. So I think the individual, it starts with you just adopting a new mindset. That's really what Trusted Learning Advisor is about. It is a mindset. It is a journey. It's not a destination. We're not going to get to a place where we say, okay, I'm a Trusted Learning Advisor today, says me, and I'm done. It's like being a leader. You don't put leader on your business card. And to be a leader means that I have people who are willing to be led by me. So if no one is willing to be led by me, am I a leader? And it's the same for being a trusted learning advisor. If my stakeholders and my business partners don't recognize me as that, they don't treat me as that, then does it actually exist? No. I can call myself whatever I want to, but it's really about the perception outside of us. So I share all that to say we have to help change the perception of the way our stakeholders see us. So, for example, it's building the relationships with your stakeholders. It's using things like a partner commitment and an expectation charter when you're just building that relationship with your stakeholder to figure out, how do we work together? What are you willing to commit to this relationship? What can I expect of you? What can you expect of me? It's little nuanced aspects like that that help to start to see you a little bit differently. The other free advice I'll give right now is watch your language. We often use language that is meaningful only to us. When you are speaking with your stakeholder, you need to use their language. So don't use our acronyms. Our stakeholder doesn't care what an LMS is. They don't know what an LXP is. What's a MOOC? Who's Kirkpatrick? What's a level 3 survey? They don't know any of that. So ask them for a definitions guide, ask them for an acronym guide, take a look at maybe the last 10 strategy decks that they've put together, look for keywords that are in there, and start to use those words in your vocabulary so that your stakeholder really understands that you understand their business. Because our stakeholders love to say, you don't know my business. You're in L&D. You don't know sales. You don't know IT. You don't know this. You don't know that. It is our job to know all of that. And so that's why we have to be embedded in their business, be building relationships with frontline workers, be understanding their lexicon, their vocabulary, etc. No, it was a lot. Sorry.
No, that's great. That's great. It's a few steps. Certainly recommend getting a copy of the book, The Trusted Learning Advisor. You can certainly do that at thetrustedlearningadvisor.com. You can get to know Keith more at keithkeating.com. But Keith, if you have one more thing, one more bit of wisdom that you'd like to impart on our L&D friends, maybe it's about AI, maybe it's about being a better partner or whatever it is, what would that be?
Research. Do your research. One of the best pieces of advice I could give is our job is to make our stakeholder the hero of their own story. It's not to make ourselves look good. It's to make them look good. We're here to support them. And oftentimes our stakeholder is also an order taker. Somebody else made a decision to somebody else. They told them, they're telling us. And so as you're working with them, keep that in the back of your mind. But one of the tools that you can use is research, so that it's not Keith saying something and it's not the voice of Keith, but rather I am a conduit for the data that already exists. For example, World Economic Forum, McKinsey Global Institute. These are industry research firms that can provide rich data that you can then bring into the conversation to help you try and validate the point that you may be trying to prove, whatever it is. I use research. I use other people in my network that aren't necessarily part of the organization, but I bring them into these conversations. Moral of the story is, it's not about me as an individual, because you can argue against my word, my voice. But when we bring in data to really back up what it is that we're trying to say, the change of the behavior that we're trying to implement in our organization, it makes for a much stronger business case.
Yeah, that's great. Research outside the organization, outside of yourself, and bring that in. It's one of the reasons why I do the podcast that I do, because I get to spend time with smart folks like you who sometimes validate my thinking and sometimes challenge my thinking. And I love that. That's super good. So again, friends, if you're listening and you're watching, The Trusted Learning Advisor is a great book. Lots of tools, lots of techniques, insights into ROI, insights into AI, lots of great stuff. Again, go to keithkeating.com, just like it sounds, KEITHKEATING.com, and get to know Dr. Keith Keating. His book is fantastic, and he's got a lot more insight than he just shared today, but I'm super grateful that he shared what he did. Thanks, Keith.
Thank you. Appreciate your show.
Absolutely.